Okay, we're back again. And again, next up is the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services. That's from 11 to noon. And it's in your books of the volume 2, beginning on page 91. And we'll start now. And Director, you can introduce yourself. Oops, can't hear. No.
Okay,
There we go.
you can hear me now.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Good morning, and thank you, Chairman Costello and members of the City Council Ways and Means Committee. I am Irene Augustin, the new director of the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services. I'm joined here by Tisha Edwards, who served as acting director of MOHS from May 2020 to May 2021. However, before I present MOHS's fiscal year 2022 budget, I would like to take a few moments to introduce myself. I assumed my role as director with the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services on June 1st. Yes, that was this Tuesday. I most recently served as the Director of Coordinated Entry and Problem Solving for San Francisco's Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing. And previous to that, I served as the Director of Human Services for the City of St. Louis that managed not only homeless services, but also seniors, veterans, youth, families, and the Office of the Disabled. I've dedicated the past 20 years of my career to human services and have experienced every role within homeless services that includes outreach, shelter, to permanent housing. However, my desire to see systemic change in how we serve our neighbors facing housing instability and homelessness is what drew me to the work in the public sector. I've had the opportunity to work with different major cities and to see firsthand successful strategies in addressing homelessness and experience strategies that have struggled or failed. This insight has helped me to work with communities to avoid initiatives that are not effective and to focus on best practices and strategies that will help individuals and families to quickly connect to housing and services that end homelessness. The COVID-19 pandemic has increased the need for communities to address homelessness and housing. The public health crisis also further exposed the disparities in our communities. While this past year has been difficult for everyone, the federal government understands that healthcare is housing and housing is infrastructure. There are recent investments to help our communities recover, serve individuals and families at risk and of experiencing homelessness, and increase funding support in affordable housing is unprecedented. This presents a tremendous opportunity to make a difference in the lives of so many and for Baltimore. Through collaborative planning and strategic investment, Baltimore will address homelessness and achieve functional zero. I look forward to working closely with the mayor, city council, and local stakeholders to implement strategies that move us towards ending homelessness in the city. Without further ado, I'd like to go over the fiscal year 2022 MOH budget. So the mission of MOHS is to make homelessness rare, brief, and preventable. MOHS administers the federal, state, and local funding awarded to Baltimore to address homelessness and contracts with more than 50 service providers to assist in coordinating an array of emergency and housing services on behalf of the continuum of care. This includes gathering and monitoring data for reporting and supports the Homeless Management Information System. The budget for the service number 356 is $7.2 million. Next slide, please. I just want to go over some notable budget items. General fund supporting positions were changed based on grant availability and staffing needs. This includes a public relations officer to support agency outreach and communication to partners, stakeholders, and our clients. Annually, the city receives support from COC Planning grant funds to cover administration costs related to the COC, or the continuum of care. And additionally, support was provided by the casino to increase staffing support for both outreach and shelter. Next slide, please. In terms of the key work and accomplishments for this area, I've been really impressed with Baltimore and for Baltimore to quickly respond to the public health crisis and implement its response plan to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 and assist our most vulnerable populations. Like many communities, the focus will turn to rehousing. However, obtaining identification and vital documents are critical to the rehousing efforts and ongoing ability to help people experiencing homelessness obtain housing, benefits, and employment. MOHS has been able to streamline the housing application process for clients to work in partnership to gather these documents. Additionally, Baltimore launched the My Digital Data Locker, which will help to provide a safe and free digital storage to keep vital documents safe, as well as assist service providers in the housing application. And just to note how significant this is, I've worked in many different cities where obtaining vital documents has been an issue, and to be able to partner with MVA and the Social Security Administration Office is pretty tremendous. And then to have a centralized location to keep these documents is also something that my hope is that other communities learn from and can put in place in their communities. It is an ongoing issue nationally, and it's good to see that Baltimore has made big strides in this area. Next slide, please. So the next service category is service number 893, which is homeless prevention and support services. In this, the recommended budget for this is $523,000. Services include housing relocation, which is provided by United Way, and other direct services for youth provided by Youth Empowerment Society, and victims of domestic violence provided by House of Ruth. I want to point out that in, I believe, fiscal year 20, that there were 16 million that was assigned to this category in terms of to provide prevention and support services. After we did a review of the services in itself, it was better and a more appropriate fit to put into services, the service category number 896, which is permanent housing. So I want to be clear that no funding was taken away from MOHS, but we designated that to a service category that better fit the services and the activities around this. I also want to say that prevention is an important part of our continuum. But in order to do this successfully for any community, it really is to work in partnership with our local stakeholders. And we will be working very closely with the Mayor's Office of Children and Family Success to be able to work on strategies and more comprehensive services around prevention. We are well aware that there will be an increased need for these services because of COVID-19, and I do want to stress the importance that that partnership is in pursuing this, and that we need to maximize every resource within the city to be able to meet the needs. Next slide. Okay. I think. Okay. Moving on to service area 894, outreach to people experiencing homelessness. The budget for this category is $2 million. I also want you to be aware that this does not include ESGCV funds because the notification of these funds came in after the fact. But outreach provides people experiencing homelessness assistance with basic needs, connections to housing, case management, medical and other substance abuse treatment, job readiness, and employment services and other community resources. We are very grateful for partners within our community, which include Downtown Partnership of Baltimore, People Encouraging People, and Healthcare for the Homeless to provide support. We also know that there are members within the private sector that also support our efforts. And as I become more in tune with Baltimore and our services here, I look forward to partnering with all of them. Next slide. Here are the key accomplishments and areas of work that we accomplished in outreach. I do want to say that outreach is an important part of our homeless response system. However, our goal always should be focused on housing. I look forward, like I said, to working with our stakeholders and with our outreach teams in partnership to identify ways to improve upon our ability to connect those who are unsheltered to the appropriate services and to get them connected to housing as quickly as possible. Next slide. So this slide for service number 895 is temporary shelter. The recommended budget for this is 21 million. This covers support for city, 9 city shelters, which include Associated Catholic Charities, Baltimore Station, Healthcare for the Homeless, Historic East Baltimore Community Action Coalition, House of Ruth, McVets, Project Place, St. Vincent de Paul, and Time Organization. The budget includes 9 million of unallocated grant funding in anticipation of additional federal support, as homeless individuals are particularly vulnerable to the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide, please. I do want to go back to one more slide to the outcomes. So with all the performance measures, and like I said, this has been my 4th day with MOHS, but I do want to take a more critical look at our performance measures. One that I do want to point out is looking at lengths of stay. This I know is a critical area of process improvement. And in my time in other communities, I found that we've spent so much time trying to connect people to housing and to get our numbers up in that, which is important. But what is equally important is the amount of time it takes from identifying someone that's homeless to actually connecting them to housing. And so right now, in looking at this, and I would say this is not just unique to Baltimore, this is something that all communities need to look at or are looking at, is the length of time it takes to get someone services. And this is an area that we need to continue to improve upon. 90 days, is definitely a better target than what we're looking at right now. But the shorter we can make that, the more successful we know in permanently ending someone's experience with homelessness. And so 90 days equates to 3 months. And, in 3 months, you're still homeless. And so when you think of it in those terms, and that's why that's one of the things that I want to bring in terms of process improvement to our system, is to figure out how do we shorten that amount of time so that we are also delivering on our mission of making people's experience with homelessness brief. And so I wanted to specifically point that out because it's something that you're going to see MOHS discuss with our partners and to take a look at in terms of improving. Okay, next slide. And so here are the work and accomplishments for this service area. I do want to say that hotel contracts have been extended through September 2021. FEMA reimbursements is being handled by our city's finance office. I also want to state that the city has issued an RFI to explore purchasing hotels and that this is a multi-agency effort. But I think as we head into what our services are going to look like post-COVID, and to really understand what is that balance between our need for emergency services such as outreach and shelter, and to balance that with housing. That is something that I will be working, and my team at MOHS will be working with our COC and our stakeholders in our community to really understand, what is that balance, and how do we really keep our eye on that goal of housing for those that are experiencing homelessness. So there will be a lot of discussion on this for sure in the next few months. And I look forward to working with our partners on this effort. Three more pages, sorry. Okay. So the last area is service number 896. This is the largest part of our portfolio with a recommended budget of 37 million. We administer community-based programs that provide medium to long-term housing assistance and support services. Funding includes federal grant for COC and youth homelessness demonstration project. And housing programs include permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, and housing opportunities for people with AIDS, which is also known as HOPWA. The next few slides go over the major budget items there, and also the performance measures, which we will be taking a look at more closely and updating within the next year. I think the important thing that I want to impress upon, and as I close this out, that our goal for all individuals and families that live in Baltimore really is to, if they're experiencing homelessness, is to get them to housing. It's also to work with our partners to provide the appropriate supports in our community so that they stay in housing. And that it's important to also work with our partners to prevent homelessness so they don't find themselves on the street or in the shelters. And so MOHS covers the continuum, but we don't do it alone. We do it with our community and we all play a role. And I look forward to working with everyone on reaching functional zero and helping our families in Baltimore to grow and thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Augustine, and welcome here to our city, and also your job as Director of Office of the Homelessness. Very important subject matter for our city, and we are here to help and work with you as much as possible. You had mentioned you're in your fourth day, so I know that Director Edwards is also going to be assisting in answering questions. And I'll start off with my first two questions. The first one is, I know that HABC has received about 278 housing vouchers worth $3.1 million from HUD as a result of the American Rescue Plan. And these vouchers are to be used to help vulnerable residents with the cost of finding and renting a unit, including security deposit assistance. The deadline for distributing these vouchers is July 1st. And I guess my question is, my first question is, has HOHS and HABC devised a plan on how to allocate the vouchers especially since we know that they have to be issued by the end of October. So it's a very time-sensitive issue.
Sure, and like you said, I'm in my fourth day, but I know that in my fourth day that there have been discussions between MOHS and HABC. And I was in a meeting yesterday with the COC regarding the emergency housing vouchers. I understand the pressing timeline in this. I would say that Baltimore is in the same situation as every other community in having to organize this very quickly. But I know that a plan is being devised as we speak. Uh, Director Edwards, I don't know if you want to add anything more to that, to add a little more context to it, since I'm very new.
Director Edwards, any comment?
Thank you, Councilwoman Middleton. No, I think you've covered everything, Director Augustine. It's a new program. HABC, MOHS, and the COC have to be in agreement in how to administer those funds. There is negotiations happening now, and we're hoping to be able to release details about the program by the end of the month, because those vouchers, we would like for them to be available in early July. But again, it requires all three partners to be on the same page about the priorities and the scope of the program. So more information is coming, Councilwoman Middleton.
Okay. So, and then my second question, is there a plan or is already in place, or are you working on a plan to use it to utilize funding from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund or other sources to continue these efforts after distributing all the HUD vouchers?
Again, I'm still learning the nuances of our system. I firmly believe in maximizing every single dollar allocated, whether it's local, state, and federal funds to this, but I know that I will need to continue to work with my team and with the city to better understand the funding sources for this so that we have an appropriate plan moving forward. I do want to impress upon that, with the increase in federal funds, that this is an opportunity for Baltimore, but we have to be strategic. We have to be thoughtful about how we're going to approach this, and we have to do it together. And so more will come from my office as I quickly learn about the system. And will, like I said, I'm happy to work with all the stakeholders, the city council and the mayor's office on this.
Okay, and then just to let you know that, uh, we've had a history of losing federal funds in the past, and this is just, all of this is time sensitive, and it needs to be all hands on deck to work positively together. And that includes the council along with the mayor and his administration. All these different things are just so important and critical. It's even before COVID had started, and just COVID just made things a little, worse. So just wanted to put that out there. That's all of that is on our radar as a council, and just very important because we are with our constituents every single day and we talk to homeless. I have an emergency shelter in my district in one of the schools. So it's just a very important piece.
Mhm. No, I agree. And, my long career in nonprofit was in fundraising, so I do not like returning money to anyone. And I, know that we're going to need to use every single dollar that we get and more. But we need to be strategic in that and to make sure that, again, we're moving together on that. So,
Thank you. And then the next council person we have on the list would be Councilwoman Ramos. And before you go, Councilwoman, I just want to mention that I have to step offline for a few, and Council Member Stokes is going to chair as we move forward. Councilwoman Ramos?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for your help this morning. Welcome, Director, to Baltimore. I'm very excited to have you and your experience here in Baltimore. And I'll come downstairs. I'm just upstairs. I'll come downstairs and meet you after the hearing. I want to say very clearly that Director Edwards and the city did the exact right thing during the pandemic, and that was to house as many people as possible wherever we could find housing, and that was in empty hotels. So we have, if I understand, about 500 people that are currently in our hotels. At no time will it be okay that they are back out on the street. So I'm wondering if you can help us, and of course with Director Edwards, and the team has already, I think, thought through this a little bit. What is the plan? I realize that, FEMA money, 100% reimbursement is, and by the way, the city took the risk in housing people with not knowing whether or not we'd be reimbursed, and thank goodness that gamble paid off. It was the right thing to do. But the next step, given that FEMA money is going to be at a 75-25, 75% reimbursed with a 25% match later on in the year, and of course, as we get back into things, the hotels will need to be used for something else. So we need to think of that plan. We also know that we do not have enough housing. This is a big deal that I've been working on for my entire career. And so we're going to have to work together on that piece as well. But the sort of next step around these, folks being able to get housed after being in the hotels, could you help us with what that plan is very specifically? I appreciate it.
Sure. I definitely will help. I think is what I want to first say. I know I'm still learning about what kind of the layout of MOHS and the funding streams. However, I agree, Councilwoman, that Baltimore absolutely did the right thing by setting up the hotels. This helped to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 and made sure that those that were vulnerable to COVID-19 were safe. But the next part of this is how do we really ramp down the services set up in response to COVID-19, but do it in a way that connects people to housing and to help them continue to rebuild their lives. In terms of the plan itself, this is something that I know I'm going to have to work with all our departments, with our stakeholders to make sure it's a plan that we can put in place. In San Francisco, where I came from and worked very closely with our COVID response, they had set up 29 hotels. 25 were shelter-in-place hotels, 5 were isolation and quarantine. So I know how much time and effort it takes to run it. That was what my deployment was for a few months, was overseeing the alternative sheltering system there. But I equally know how important it is to make sure that we connect individuals to the housing and services they need to thrive. And that's why that plan is so important. I was able to work on the strategy with San Francisco while I was there. And I do have some insight in how to do that here, but their resources are very different from the resources in Baltimore. It would be great to have the influx of general fund and state funding that they have, but I know that that's not the same picture here. So we have to be a lot more thoughtful and strategic about how we really work this plan and make sure that we're progressing appropriately. It's not impossible. I don't think it's impossible. We just have to be a lot more strategic. And if we can get more funds to do it, and that's my fundraising side coming out of me, I want to work with our city to be able to do that so that we can continue to support housing and affordable housing in our community as we start to see, and our goal is to get to functional zero. I want to see reductions in our numbers. But that means, we have to have a process in place and that we're all playing a role in it. So I know I don't have specific plans for you. I do have some in mind, but I also need to do a lot more kind of fact gathering and talking to other individuals so that we can work quickly to hash this plan in place. I'm well aware of the funding kind of FEMA deadlines as well, and those play a huge role in terms of these timelines. And so I do feel that sense of urgency as well.
Thank you. Director Edwards, did you want to add anything?
No, I really do think that Irene is the expert in this matter. She comes from a city that's really had to struggle with this. This is a part of the transition. My job was to ramp it up. Her job is to figure out what to do with the ramp up. So I know that we're all working together. There are two things I would add to Irene. First, I just want to remind you, Councilwoman Ramos, that we do have the expanded rapid rehousing program that's up and running, and we have moved 100 people out of those hotels into housing.
Great.
Those
Wonderful.
vouchers that everybody is talking about,
Right.
part of that voucher allocation is also hopefully going to be about moving people from those shelters to housing. So what Director Augustine is talking about is we need to just bring all of those resources together in a strategic way and deploy them where there is the most critical need. And so we got a lot of moving pieces. The good news is we have an influx of resources that have come in. We've started the process using rapid rehousing as a tool to move people out of shelter, but rapid rehousing assistance is only good for up to 21 months.
That's
So
right.
there's a permanency issue and a sustainability issue, and we've got to get people who have experienced homelessness the services they need so that they can help be a part of that sustainability process. So it is very important. You're raising the right questions, but I think we both need a little bit more time to come back with the level of specifics now that we have a better view of the resources that are coming in.
Councilwoman,
Sorry, I muted. Sorry. Thank you. I
is this
look
your
forward
second
to-
question,
Yeah, I'll get to my second
Okay.
question. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to also go to the 90 days goal that you were talking about under 895 temporary housing. Yes, we would definitely want to work with you on getting there. Again, I said this the other day in the housing hearing, we're going to need more money to get better, more subsidy and help for actually getting more housing for folks. And that might be the sticking point there. So, when you reanalyze that, if you could come to our committee, we actually have another hearing on this issue on Mayor's Office of Homeless Services, and not scheduled yet, but it'll come up. So certainly willing to have that. So just wanted to point that out as well. And then the homeless prevention piece, how do people access that? What's the entry point?
I'm going to defer that to Director Edwards.
So we are the lead on the rental assistance in homeless prevention work. So all of the shelter diversion, keeping people who are in housing stabilized, that is through a partnership through MOHS and MOCFS. So we are the lead agency, Councilwoman Ramos, through our CAP centers to support the homelessness prevention resources for the community. If you are currently housed and you are at risk of losing your housing, those programming resources are with our CAP centers.
Okay, so if someone is accessing other services and you figure out that they're also at risk, then there's these other pieces that come in. Okay, great.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Council President Nick Mosby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess back to you, Tisha, real quick. Regarding the voucher program that we talked about, I think earlier this morning as well as yesterday, I know that there was dedicated funds that you kind of talked about specific to transitioning folks from the temporary hotel to hopefully permanent housing supported by the city. In that same effort, was there any dedicated money or dedicated vouchers associated with security deposits?
So just as a point of clarification, Council President Mosby, vouchers are not administered by MOHS or MOCFS. Vouchers are currently housing vouchers, which are what pays your rent, are administered through HABC. That's the lead agency for vouchers. In terms of funding to support security deposits, the rental assistance program that we are currently operating does have relocation services as a part of that suite of resources available to individuals. And yes, sir, it does also include the opportunity to access security deposit support if needed, among many other services as a part of the rental assistance program.
Do you know the percentage of money that was used specific to security deposits from the money that we spent?
The relocation program is a part of the phase 3 program that I talked about earlier today. Remember, I said all of these funds have different rules and new programmatic opportunities. So
Yeah.
we are now reviewing the federal regulations associated with that pot of resources, but it's under relocation. And we have not done relocation previously. That is something that we're working on with the administration going forward.
Gotcha. So to date, we have not had the opportunity or program in place to support security deposits through the pandemic.
Not at this moment.
Not at this moment. But the idea is that going forward, we will develop a way of factoring to do so.
Yes, sir. We're taking that matter under advisement, both by looking at the federal regulations and collaboration with the administration. Yes, sir.
Okay, because again, you know, my concern, it's been the concern of many council members of the expectation of seeing 100+% increase in folks utilizing loopholes to evict folks.
Right.
And then the concern for them transitioning, you know, that's a tough fall for middle class.
Everybody.
For everybody, right? And the residual effects that it'll have on the city and our economy. I guess, Ms. Augustine, from your past work, and you being a subject matter expert in this work, and welcome to Baltimore, have you had experience in dealing with security deposit programs from your previous jobs?
Yes, I've had experience in it. And you know, I think you also bring up even the idea of evictions and housing providers. A lot of times when we think of homeless services, we don't include the housing community
Correct.
more fully into this discussion. It's kind of like, here's this group out here, but we need to bring them more into the fold because it all plays together, especially as we start to get and connect individuals and families to housing. We need to be able to keep them in housing. And it doesn't all fall just on the individual or the family. It also falls on, you know, the expectation of our landlords and our housing providers to also work to keep people in homes. And so I've seen it on both ends. Yes, you know, I'm excited to work with Director Edwards and the other stakeholders in terms of, are there ways to quickly get people into housing, which includes not only rental assistance, but security deposits, sometimes utility assistance and all those other things. But then it's also, how do I work with the city and our my partner agencies here on keeping people in homes and working with the landlord and housing community on doing that. I think this is really a tremendous opportunity for Baltimore. I would also say that these are the same issues you see in other communities.
Right.
And so I think there's an ability to really make some pretty significant headway in this, where we're all working together. Everyone plays a role.
Yeah.
Even our housing community. It's just making sure that we understand what that role is in the context of the whole system.
No, I appreciate that. And again, you being a subject matter expert in this, because I know other municipalities similar to Baltimore have taken aggressive approaches in supporting folks in that transition, particularly as it relates to security deposits. And, you know, I've already said, we know it's going to be a significant increase from the loopholes that landlords have been able to kind of play even through the moratorium of evictions. As soon as July 1 comes, we're going to see an exponential growth of folks that are going to specifically need these types of resources. So from your efforts of knowing what's been going on around the country and other best practices, and the fact that Baltimore City has not yet had an opportunity or kind of a program to kind of help with that level of assistance, really interested in seeing your experience and your background, the types of things that we can do here in the city of Baltimore. Because my concern is definitely the chronically homeless population. And I think that a lot of times when we talk about housing security, we're kind of focused on them. But it's really also the folks that are in transition. That's where we see the residual effects of their children in schools and dropping out or not being able fully involved. That's where we see an increase in mental health illness. That's where we see an increase in behavioral health concerns. So that has a huge effect on a multi-layer of disciplines for all levels, including the middle class, when they have housing and security issues. So again, any leverage that you can provide in your experience there, if you could please keep my office informed on what you think are the best practices. Really interested, again, specifically to
And the one thing that I do want to state that as I look at the system, like a lot of times we say, okay, here's our process in our system, and we stick to it for years and years and years. And it's sometimes hard to change. I want to really work with Baltimore to create a dynamic system. Like this is one that we have to continually monitor the situation because human needs change, our environment change, and so should our strategies towards it. It might not be security deposits. We might have that taken care of, but then another issue comes in, and we have to be able to pull the trigger to address it quickly so that we don't see people fall through the cracks and find themselves on the street and homeless.
I like the way I like the way you talk. Always a data-driven, evidence-based solution is what I'm interested in, and that is dynamic. That changes. So thank you so much for your time. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I have some comments, but we have 13 minutes and our lunch start at 12, and we're going to finish at 12 because everybody get a chance to eat. So I have first, Director Austin, welcome to Baltimore. I will work closely with you. I know they just threw you out in the woods and say, do all this, and we understand it, but you have the experience. But I want to thank the Continuum of Care, the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services, and Jesse, and all the hard work that they do around the city that sometimes don't get recognized. But I want to just mention that if you go over to Healthcare for the Homeless, where I've been working closely with, they have a mobile unit over there because a lot of people feed our homeless people, but they don't get a chance to use the bathroom. They don't get a chance to take a bath. They don't get a chance to take a shower. And, they are people. So we got to make sure they feel good about themselves. And working with DPW, DOT, and housing about 2 years ago, and Councilman Costello, we were able to put that mobile unit over there now, and it's been there 2 years. I would like to see how we can do that maybe in somewhere in West Baltimore, because homeless people are all over the city. They're not just in the 12th or 11th or 13th district. They're all over the city. So I look forward to working closely with you, Director Austin, because I have some ideas, because I sit on the Continuum of Care board also, and I know how hard they work in terms of that. And then we're building a 54 unit in Oliver, because I always say we cannot use our homeless people as checkers and chess and check it. Put them here, put them there. We got to start, the conversation has to be permanent housing. And I want to thank the mayor for even looking at a hotel and providing a more permanent housing for our homeless community. So I wanted to make sure, when I work with you, maybe you talk to Councilwoman Middleton about having a mobile unit over there, and just tell you how happy I am that we're taking the lead over in the 12th district with the Oliver community to provide permanent housing for our homeless here in Baltimore City. So that is my spill, and our next person will be Councilman Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome, new director. I'm really excited to work with you. I know you're probably aware we have quite an issue with homelessness here in the city, and eager to hear some of your insights on how to begin tackling that problem in a new and innovative way, or maybe not new and innovative, maybe just more effective. So, you know, my only question, I know we want to get out of here soon, and I know there are folks after me, is with regard to an instance that I personally have sort of struggled with, and have struggled with some of my some of the folks in my district, and that's with helping folks outside of work hours. Our outreach folks don't work, I believe, after hours nor on the weekends, which I think is sort of put myself and my office in a sort of interesting position where we have to consider calling the police in order to respond or to help folks who are experiencing homelessness, especially during the winter. I personally had this instance happen in front of my home. There was a homeless gentleman sleeping in front of my home for over a week, and I did not want to call the police. So I tried calling the homeless services. I tried calling other nonprofit services, and nobody really was able to help service on the weekend. I had to wait. They went out there. He refused service, and they kept coming back time and time again. Any thoughts on how we can begin to meet that need in hours that are outside of normal working hours?
So I know that I'm aware that during the winter there are extended hours in terms of services. But I also know that um, uh, having services outside of business hours, this is not a issue unique to Baltimore. I see it in other communities as well. And something that I certainly want to work with my team and outreach and our providers to take a look at. Because it's not only in terms of response, because once you respond, then where do you send them? And it's not just our homeless providers that, some do work extended hours, some are able to help. But if you're going to send them to another service, they might not be open either. So it's larger than just outreach. And that's why we have to discuss it more as a system. And, I'm always about continual improvement and meeting the needs. And that's why monitoring the services, monitoring the system is an important piece of this, because we're going to have to pivot at one point. Like with shelter, some days you're going to have it, some weeks or months you're going to have it full. Some aren't going to be as full. And so, how does your system work when you have those ebbs and flows? So I'm certainly interested in learning more very quickly about outreach and shelter. I want us to be well prepared for the winter. It also requires that we work with our partners. And in St. Louis, where I think we've had kind of the similar kind of issues, we did work closely with the police department, but they had a specific squad to work with homeless outreach. And a lot of our clients knew those officers. I would love to see, services in that first phase to be not law enforcement, but I know that it's also a partnership, because you never know where you're going to find someone, and we need to be on the same page in terms of how we connect to services. So I look forward to working with you and to our partners within the community to really identify the solution that would work best for Baltimore.
Thank you. And I'll just sort of add, of course, this will also be an issue in the summer as well, when we see extremely hot days. So really looking forward to working with you. And Mr. Chair, I'll just make one statement.
Real quick, Chair, we got 7 minutes. We
Okay.
won't stop at 12 noon.
Let's move on then. I'll come back.
So no, go ahead. You can go ahead. But if we go
I just
close
wanted to
to
acknowledge. I just want to acknowledge Gun Violence Awareness Day. If you guys notice, I made a quick change in my shirt to orange to acknowledge the day. So just want to acknowledge that for folks today. But thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you. Welcome, Director.
Thank you, Chair. And when we get to 12, is there any additional questions, Ms. Austin? You can put your email in the chat, and you can, whoever don't get their questions, they can email Ms. Austin when she put that email in the chat. Councilman Burnett.
you, Mr. Chair. The one question I had, and I know you probably need more time to sort of formulate a strategy, but one of the concerns that have been raised to me is the issue of sheltering or housing for LGBTQ individuals that may not necessarily always feel comfortable in a traditional shelter. Can we just talk, I guess, broadly about the strategy or perspective that you want to bring to be able to house folks who are particularly vulnerable from that community?
Sure, and yes, I will need a little more time to learn more about the services in our community, but I would say nationally, there's definitely populations where there's huge disparities, and I would say that would be in the LGBTQ community, especially how it affects youth as well. And I think part of this, and one of the things, and I'll make this really quick, that I've known amongst all people experiencing homelessness is really that lack of support. And I would say that that LGBTQ youth and individuals, like for some of them that do find themselves homeless, it's that kind of support and that network. And I really am interested in working with our providers to figure out, okay, what is the right environment to help those experiencing homelessness be able to not only overcome their housing crisis, but then be able to thrive and to continue to be able to grow in that. And I think it needs to be specific to Baltimore. And so I've seen, shelter where, it's been more congregate style. I know that I've seen housing units that, create community for the LGBTQ community. I've seen that in Phoenix. But I think it's really getting to know our community and what are the services and the housing needs of it so that we can best serve our LGBTQ community here. So I think I guess there's more to come on that, but I've seen some successful strategies that I think could work in Baltimore.
Looking forward to working together and hearing a little bit more about that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Burnett, I would just like to offer up, just because this is new for Director Augustine, is that we are strengthening our partnership with Baltimore Safe Haven. We see them as an extraordinary resource in working with young people in the LGBT community. We've increased our funding to them. They are a part of our youth homelessness demonstration project. So this is a critical area where the agency has expanded its outreach, and we know that there are others in the community other than Baltimore Safe Haven that we need to connect with. But I just want you to know that we've started that. It is top of mind, and not only is it a partnership, but it is a funded partnership. So we see Baltimore Safe Haven as a critical first step, and there's much more we know that we need to do, but MOHS does have those agreements in place because they are most connected to that community that you are referencing. So thank you for asking that question.
And that's great to hear. That was they actually reached out to me the most, so it's awesome to hear that y'all established that partnership. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Dorsey, and
thank you, Mr. Chair.
So we want to wrap that up as soon as you finish. Thanks.
Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Augustine, Director Augustine. I really appreciate you coming to Baltimore. I'm really looking forward to working with you and very thankful for what you bring to the city in your experience. I had 3 questions. I'm going to try to just...
We're only doing 2, Councilman. You got any
questions? I know, but I'm going to get through this real fast. Is Service 893, is this where we should be looking to find funding to support legal counsel for evictions? We have made a significant effort here to support a right to counsel, and this service is described as providing direct services for households at imminent risk of eviction. Is this, or is there somewhere else that we should be looking for money to support a right to counsel?
Sure, I'm going to defer this question to Director Edwards.
Hello, Councilman Dorsey. Thank you for raising this as an important and critical need in our community. The MOHS, because of the way that we've structured the rental assistance and eviction eviction prevention program, it crosses 3 agencies: DHCD, MOHS, and MOCFS. So no, you would not see the funding in budget number 893. That is a partnership between DHCD and MOCFS. So right now we are funding a lot of the council, right to council resources through our CSBG grant that is sitting in DHCD and in partnership with my office, the Mayor's Office of Children and Family Success, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate the quick answer. Mira, can you help me after this just identify any funding that is supposed to go to right to council, please? Thank you. Second question, real quick. I appreciate you bringing attention to improving our performance metrics. On this same service, I didn't really understand this percentage of homeless households who are first-time homeless. We had a target, we had an actual for fiscal 20. They're different from one another, and we have eliminated this as a performance metric for FY22.
I will have to look more.
I don't even understand
Yeah.
what that metric is
Council,
supposed to be getting at. Is my question.
What is the question?
So the metric and just as a quick, but I need to look at what is being collected versus what the performance measure is, because it is one of the HUD system performance measures. However, I'm not sure how it's being collected, like the data that goes into it. But basically, we know that people experiencing homelessness, their journey is very different. Obviously, there's been a lot of attention to chronic homelessness. However, those experiencing first-time homelessness, we want to make sure our system's in tune to help those individuals as quickly as possible. If they continue not to get services or not to get housed, then they can turn into people being chronic homelessness. So it's important to look at individuals and families that face homelessness for the first time and to really measure, when they come into the system and how quickly we can get them connected to housing. And then also to look at the performance measure on recidivism to make sure that they're not coming back into the system. That will help keep our system in tune. But it requires really understanding what data goes into it. So in terms of the percentages itself, I can't really speak to that because I don't know the data that well, but that's the rationale at looking at first-time homelessness.
Hey, Councilman.
Okay, great. I appreciate it. I
I
didn't know whether a lower number was good or a higher number was good. It's unclear to me. Maybe we could have some follow-up conversation about that. Just real quick, last year during the budget,
Councilman, real quick, if you got any questions, could you put in the chat also? For Mr. Austin, if you have any additional questions, and so we can wrap this up, it's after 12.
Can I take-
Come back at 12:30.
can I take 10 to
Sure.
15 seconds, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Augustin, obviously you're on day 4. Last year during this budget hearing, I made a request for information that I never received. I think that you can probably produce this. A functional operating definition of rapid rehousing and what the specific parameters are within which we would employ what we define as rapid rehousing. We do not, to my knowledge, did not have what I think would be a best practices definition of rapid rehousing that we're operating around previously. I'd like to know what that is. I asked for it during the budget last year. I'd love to have it. Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
Councilman. We go
Thank you.
return at 12:30, and our next will be up the Board of Liquor License Commissioners. Thank you.